Blind date disaster. The waitress walked in, the paralyzed male. CEO never expected to smile again. The restaurant shimmered with glass and conversation when Harper walked in, clutching her purse like armor. Every eye flicked toward her, then away. At the far end, a man in a tailored suit sat beneath a chandelier's glow, Ethan Cole, the name behind half the city's tech empire. His wheelchair gleamed under the table's edge. When he looked up and saw her, surprise cracked the smooth control of his expression. "You're Harper?" he asked, voice sharp enough to hush the nearest table. She nodded, her throat tight. The pause that followed felt endless, filled with forks freezing midair and whispered guesses. "You're my date?" he asked again, disbelieving. "Unless you ordered someone else," she said softly. His laugh came out short, brittle. The arrogance behind it was reflex, not cruelty. Around them, the restaurant waited for someone to break first. "Sit," he said finally. She did. Between them, the table stretched like a border neither dared cross. "You work in hospitality?" His tone was polite, detached. "At a diner on 5th, she answered. "Double shifts, good coffee, bad tips." For a flicker, his expression softened. "You don't need to explain yourself," he murmured. "Neither do you," she replied, and something unguarded passed between them. The waiter appeared, refilling glasses no one touched. Ethan's eyes followed a droplet sliding down the crystal like it might escape before he could. "This was a mistake," he said under his breath. Harper's pulse stumbled, but she stayed. "Maybe bad ideas make the best stories," she said. For the first time, he almost smiled. Rain began against the windows, tapping like nerves against glass. They talked because silence felt heavier. He asked why she agreed to a blind date. "Lost a bet," she said. "You?" "Lost my mind. Probably." The line broke the tension. Laughter slipped out, fragile, but real. By the time dessert arrived untouched, the air between them had changed. He wasn't the tabloid genius anymore, and she wasn't the waitress out of place. They were two people pretending not to need connection, failing beautifully. When the check came, neither reached for it. He looked at her instead. "You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have asked," she said. The corner of his mouth lifted, half surrender, half curiosity. As she walked out, the rain caught in her hair, turning the city lights into halos. Behind her, Ethan watched the door close, wondering why the sound of it felt like a beginning. Ethan Cole hadn't meant to stay for dinner. He told himself it was politeness, not curiosity, that kept him at that table. But something about Harper's voice, its warmth, its honesty, cut through the polite noise of a life built on perfection. The woman sitting across from him wasn't impressed by his money or his name. That alone made her dangerous. He introduced himself formally, as if they were in a meeting. "Ethan Cole," he said. Her eyes flickered with recognition. Everyone in the city knew the name, but the man in front of her didn't match the legend. The headlines painted him as untouchable, brilliant, cold. The man across the table looked like someone trying to remember how to breathe. There was a small scar near his temple, the kind that told stories in a single line. He spoke carefully, his words measured, as if control were the only thing holding him together. "You don't seem like the type to use dating apps," he said. "Neither do you," she answered, smiling. His laugh came hesitant, unused. "I lost a bet," he admitted. "Guess we both did," she said. When Harper mentioned the diner, the night softened. She described working double shifts, her mother's illness, and the stubborn customers who tipped in spare change and stories. Ethan listened, not out of obligation but hunger. "You make it sound exhausting," he said. "It's living," she replied. "You'd be surprised how much of life happens when you're too tired to notice." For a while, they forgot who they were supposed to be. She made him laugh, really laugh, for the first time in months. But when the laughter faded, the distance between their worlds settled back in. Ethan's gaze dropped to his wheelchair, his voice quieter now. "I used to build machines that help people walk," he said. "Then I stopped walking myself." Harper didn't flinch. "Maybe that's why you built them," she said. "So others wouldn't stop." He looked at her, startled by the simplicity of it. "You talk like someone who's lost something." "Only every day," she said with a small smile. "But I still clock in." He almost smiled back. Almost. The restaurant emptied slowly, leaving them in a pocket of quiet light. Ethan said, "People see the chair before they see me." Then make them look twice, Harper answered. Her tone wasn't soft. It was matter of fact, like advice from someone who's been overlooked too often to pity anyone else. When the bill arrived, Ethan reached for it automatically. "You don't have to," Harper said. "I can handle half." He hesitated, then smiled. "I'm not used to people insisting." "Then get used to it," she said. It wasn't flirtation, it was a challenge. Outside, the rain had stopped. Ethan's driver opened the car door, but before he left, he turned toward her. "Thank you," he said. She frowned. "For what?" "For not asking what happened to me." She nodded, watching as his car disappeared into the dark. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt lighter walking home than when she'd arrived. 3 days later, Harper carried a tray of coffees into a conference room filled with suits, not realizing she'd stepped straight into the orbit of fate. The event was for Cole Innovations, the same company whose name had once glimmered across magazine covers and billboards. She wore a catering uniform 2 sizes too big, her hair pinned back, exhaustion hidden behind a practiced smile. Ethan Cole sat at the head of the table, posture crisp, voice sharp. He looked nothing like the man from the restaurant. Surrounded by executives and assistants, he commanded the room with quiet authority. But when his eyes lifted and met hers, everything paused. The room faded to a blur of whispers and rustling papers. Recognition hit both of them at once. Awkward, uninvited, electric. "Miss?" one of the assistants barked. Harper blinked, the tray trembling slightly in her hands. Ethan's gaze never left her. "Harper," he said, low enough for only her to hear. The assistant frowned. "Mr. Cole." He didn't answer. "You work here now?" he asked softly. "Just catering," she said. "Temporary." He nodded once. "Still the hardest kind of work there is." She wanted to disappear, but his voice stopped her. "You look tired." "You look like someone who shouldn't notice," she said. His lips curved, half smile, half apology. The assistant cleared her throat, irritated. "Mr. Cole, investors are waiting. They can wait a minute longer," he said, tone steady. For a moment, the entire room seemed to exist only for them. Later, when the guests were gone and Harper was wiping down the tables, she found his tablet left behind. Curiosity tugged harder than caution. The screen glowed with a folder labeled Project Lazarus. She hesitated, then tapped it open. Designs filled the display. Schematics, neural patterns, prototypes. It wasn't about business. It was about recovery, about motion, about hope disguised as science. A shadow fell over the table. "You weren't supposed to see that," Ethan said. His voice held no anger, only weariness. "I'm sorry," Harper stammered. "I was just—" "It's fine," he interrupted. "Most people see what I've lost. You looked at what I'm still building." She met his gaze, startled by the quiet vulnerability there. "What is it?" she asked. "A second chance," he said simply. The words lingered between them. "Then why haven't you finished it?" "Because I'm afraid it won't work," he admitted. "Or worse, that it will, and I'll have no excuse left to stop living." Harper's heart tightened. "Then maybe it's time you stop being afraid." Ethan studied her, as if trying to decide whether she was brave or naive. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," she said, "but standing still is harder." For the first time since the accident, something like light flickered behind his eyes. "Maybe you're right," he murmured. Before she left, he handed her a small card with an address scribbled on it. "If you want to see what hope looks like when it's unfinished," he said, "come by tomorrow." She glanced at the card, then at him. "Is that an invitation?" "No," he said, "a warning." That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him, the man who had everything but peace. Sometimes, fate doesn't arrive gently. It knocks once, hard enough to make you listen. The next morning, Harper returned to her normal life. The diner, the noise, the ache that never seemed to rest. The bell above the door sang as if mocking her exhaustion. She wiped down tables, smiled at strangers, and tried not to think about Ethan Cole or the card burning a hole in her pocket. Still, between the clatter of dishes and the smell of burnt coffee, his voice replayed in her mind. "You looked at what I'm still building." Outside, rain streaked the windows, turning the street into moving glass. She poured another cup for a truck driver half asleep and realized she hadn't eaten since yesterday. Money was tight, tips were light, and her mother's medication refill was overdue. But somehow, the thought of that unfinished machine, of Ethan hunched over something bigger than his grief, kept her going. When her shift ended past midnight, Harper walked home in the rain. The bus never came, and the streets were too quiet for comfort. Her reflection followed her in puddles. Tired eyes, cheap shoes, borrowed strength. By the time she reached her apartment, her clothes clung to her skin. Inside, the flickering light bulb hummed softly over her mother's cough. She reheated soup, helped her mother sit up, and placed the pills by her side. "You look worn out," her mother said weakly. "You say that every night," Harper replied, smiling faintly. "Because it's true." Her mother's hand squeezed hers. "Don't let the world make you smaller." Harper didn't answer. Some promises are too fragile to speak aloud. When her mother fell asleep, Harper sat by the window, staring at the city lights. She pulled out Ethan's card and turned it over, wondering what kind of man built hope in secret. Maybe he wasn't looking for redemption. Maybe he was daring the universe to forgive him. She decided she'd go, not because she trusted him, but because she wanted to remember what faith felt like. The next morning, the diner was half empty, sunlight cutting through the blinds like sharp mercy. Lydia showed up again, polished and distant. "You're braver than you look," she said flatly. "But bravery won't save you from him." Harper frowned. "Is that a warning?" "A favor," Lydia replied. "He ruins people without meaning to." Then she left, perfume lingering like a threat. That night, Harper found a small package by her door. Inside was a pair of gloves, soft, new, expensive, and a note. For the ache. No signature, but she knew. Her throat tightened. It wasn't romance. It was gratitude. Quiet and clumsy. She smiled for the first time in days. Later, she sat on the diner steps, the gloves in her lap, staring at the rain-soaked street. Everything in her life was too fragile to hold, but something in her refused to let go. She whispered, "Tomorrow," even though she didn't believe in it yet. The next day, she woke up before dawn. Her hands trembled as she packed her bag. Sometimes, courage doesn't roar. It just shows up when you're tired of standing still. And as she left for Madison and Pine, she realized that somewhere between exhaustion and faith, she'd found the will to move again. Lydia arrived at the diner a week later, this time without her usual edge. "He asked me to give you this," she said, setting an envelope on the counter before leaving without another word. Harper opened it after her shift, when the world was quiet and the smell of coffee still lingered. Inside, Ethan's handwriting. "You once said it's not about walking, but moving again. Meet me tomorrow. I want to show you something." The next morning, she stood at the corner of Madison and Pine. Ethan was already there, dressed in a hoodie, his expression softer than she remembered. "You came," he said. "You asked," she replied. He smiled faintly, then gestured toward a nearby van. "I want to show you what hope looks like when it's unfinished." Inside, the air hummed faintly. A metal framework filled the center of the van. Braces, sensors, wires. "This is Lazarus," he said quietly. "It mimics muscle memory, helps the body remember motion." Harper stepped closer, studying it. "You built this." "I tried," he said. "Then I stopped believing in it. Or maybe in myself." She touched the cool metal gently. "So why show me?" "Because you don't look at me like I'm broken," he answered. "You look like someone who knows what rebuilding costs." The words hung between them, honest and unguarded. Harper smiled faintly. Maybe we both needed to remember what moving feels like. He powered the device on, the soft hum turning into rhythm. "It's meant to help me stand," he explained. His hands trembled. "I haven't tested it since the accident." "Then let's test it," she said. He looked at her, hesitation shadowing his face. "You're not afraid of failing?" she asked. "Every day, but I do it anyway." Ethan adjusted the straps, his jaw tight. As the machine activated, he pressed down, and for a brief, heart-stopping second, he lifted. 1 inch, 2. Then the motor sputtered and went silent. He fell back, breath ragged, eyes wet. "Failure," he muttered. "Progress," she whispered. The words settled like warmth between them. They sat in the quiet afterward, rain pattering softly on the van's roof. "You shouldn't waste time here," he said. "You're too young to be stuck in someone else's wreck. You're not wreckage, she said. You're recovery. He laughed weakly. You make broken sound poetic. It is, she said, when it learns to stand